So, Al, when you're going into a studio and you're going to decide on what kind of microphones you're going to use, how does the style of music, the recording space, and the instrumentation come into play when you're making microphone choices?
Yeah, it just somewhat, not necessarily will change what I do. I'll normally go to my go-to microphones, except if it's like an opera singer, I'm doing a classical record. Then sometimes I'll use two microphones on the singer. I'll have one maybe a foot and a half, and then one maybe 2.5 feet up a little higher. So to catch some of the ambience, because when they go from that whisper to a roar, we capture it all without distortion. But normally, it doesn't matter. If it's a rock and roll date, I'll still try to use my same microphones. I set up my drums the same. The only difference would be in setting up mics on the piano. If it's a classical piano, I certainly would mic it differently than I mic it on a pop date or a rock and roll date. But getting back to vocal mics, once I've settled in on and I've made my choices of what preamp, what microphone I'm going to use, and I try to use a Fairchild compressor on vocals when I'm recording, and I'll just tap it. I use it basically to get the Fairchild sound. It does something to the vocal that just is really pleasant. If I'm doing a rock and roll session and the artist wants to be in the room with the band and everybody's there, we're getting all kinds of leakage, I'll try to use a microphone that has a narrower pattern on it, and probably a condenser microphone rather than a valve mic or tube mic. But in general, when the vocalist's going to be isolated. When I was doing all the records with Sam Cooke, he was in the room, but I used a 47 on him all the time, and it seems to work for me. And the only time I'll ever change that is if I'm unhappy with the way that vocalist is hitting the microphone. Then I'll try something else. But, there's the M49. Neumann microphone is a great microphone. The 251 is a great microphone. There's so many great microphones. And sometimes the difference between, say, a 47 and a 251 will be maybe a minor difference between the two, but the artist is happier with the one. So that's where we go. The important thing is keeping the artist happy and getting the best performance out of the artist. So, like I said before in that thing with Benson, if you don't have anything else but a 57 and you can get a great performance, that's what counts. Yeah, I always talk to the producer, find out the instrumentation, find out who the arranger is, definitely who the artist is. If it's an artist I've worked with before, then I know what to do. And if not, we'll talk about how to work it, whether the artist is very nervous, whether it's a first recording and they're nervous, how you have to pamper them. But as far as microphones, I tell them how far to stand from the mic. I try to tell them that if they're going to be at loud points, just to kind of raise their head a little bit, to kind of aim over the microphone. I don't want to give them too much to think about because we want them thinking about the performance. But definitely the producer has something to say, and I'll look at him when we get a rundown and we have the vocalist on mic. I'll look at him and say, what do you think? And he either say yeah or no, I think it's too sibilant or not bright enough, and then we'll go to something else. All you have to remember as an engineer is that your name goes on the back of the record if you're lucky. The artist is the most important part. The artist and the producer, they are the ones you have to make happy. Sometimes it's not something you would do on your own, but that's where they're the most comfortable, so you go along with it. Try to keep the artist happy and comfortable.
Do you ever find that you have to compromise between what you want to do? For example, I just ran into a gig where big band, and normally I would take the drums and put them in an ISO room that they could see. In this particular case, the producer wanted the drums out in the room. Yeah. And I knew that there would be compromises, but for whatever reason, he wanted to cut it without the band using headphones. What do you do when you get into a situation like that where the producer has a vision that maybe conflicts with what you know to be a better way to do things?
Well, yeah. When I started recording big bands years ago, the drummer was always in the room with the brass, and we always set him up right next to the trumpets. Always. I mean, that was the ideal spot for them because the trumpet players that wanted to hear them, and that was before earphones and all of that was going on. So if the artist wants that kind of a sound, you have to go for it, and you have to find the right spot and maybe go above the drummer off a little bit. And now with earphones, it makes it a little easier to do that. But I don't change my microphone setup, whether he's in a booth or out in the room. Now, if we're overdubbing drums and that happens, then maybe I'll put some room mics up to capture the ambience of the whole room with the drummer, but generally not. Once I settle in and we're happy, everybody's happy to come in, I usually, after one take, try to get everybody in to listen. The vocalist is happy with the sound and all. I want to make sure they're comfortable, that the earphones are good and they're hearing themselves well. And once that's on, then it's just a matter of getting a good performance.